I get asked a lot about that gray area of consent, and my answer is there actually isn't a gray area of consent. Either you can see from the person's face, from the words that they're saying, the sounds they're making, from what their body is doing, that they are absolutely consenting, or you don't. And so when we're talking about the gray area, typically what comes up is like date rape situations, where the person has said no, but you just keep trying and they just kind of like look like they're not having a good time, but they stop arguing with you. That's not consent. The other situation that comes up a lot on the gray area is the whole, well, we were both intoxicated. If you were too drunk to tell whether the other person is sober enough to consent, that's not consent. Just like driving, right? If you're the one driving, you're the one that gets the ticket, not the people who piled in the passenger seat. You have to be sober enough to tell if the person you're touching is sober enough to consent, and that doesn't matter who's doing what. It's the person initiating contact. So if we're both drunk and you kiss me, it is your responsibility to make sure that we're both sober enough to understand consent in that moment. And then if I got to take your clothes off in that moment, that's my responsibility to make sure that we are both sober enough to consent and to understand what consent is. And so if things go sideways the next day, the onus is on the person who is initiating the contact, to have made sure that there was consent. And I think if we just take the whole sex piece out and just look at what we're actually arguing about, consent makes way more sense and the gray area is gone, right? Instead of talking about sex, let's talk about something more tangible, more explicit. Like, say I own a cabin and you want to use the cabin, and I'm really fucking drunk, and you're like, "Oh, I want to take my friends up to the cabin." I'm like, "Oh, whatever." And you go through my purse to get my keys and you take your friends out to the cabin. No one in their right mind is going to be like, "Oh yeah, that was okay." Like that's no one is going to be on your side that that's okay. And neither would you. You would know that you used the alcohol in that situation to take advantage in order to get those keys for the cabin. And if this weekend I was like, "Hey, do you want to take your sweethearts up to the cabin? It's empty for the weekend. Take my keys." That doesn't mean you can come to my house, break in, take my keys anytime you want to go to the cabin. It doesn't mean when I'm in the cabin, you could come over there, bang on the door, and be like, "It's my turn." Right? Like it's not reasonable. And if you were in my cabin and I was like, "Look, I actually want you to leave," you need to leave. Like there's no wiggle room there. And it's the same with sex. We just have been socialized to look at sex as something that's mysterious and consent is untangible. It's not. If you're kissing someone and they stop kissing you back, stop. If you're kissing someone and they lean away from you, don't fucking kiss them. Like it's consent is so easy to recognize if we stop getting in our head with all these scripts that we've been getting about how, you got to convince them, and they say no when they mean yes and yes when they mean no. No. Our bodies and our mouths need to be saying the same thing, or our hands if we're signing or like whatever. You need to be able to recognize that you are not entitled to someone's body and that it's not something you trick them out of. But sex is this amazing thing that we come together and share pleasure during. It's an incredible experience. But you can't have that incredible experience if you're looking at it as if it's something you take, as if it's something you trick someone out of, as if it's something you win. If you're getting points because you got to have sex instead of you're getting an incredible interaction with someone, then you're missing the point. This is Angel. Thanks for asking your questions at Sex Talk.